Hi, I'm Rick Anthony, and welcome to the Someone You Should Know podcast, the podcast that focuses on musicians, authors, and interesting people. We like to say we're making a difference one artist at a time. So sit back, have a cold one, and get ready to meet someone you should know. My guest this time started off as a teen DJ in high school, and many years later, he's still broadcasting. He wears many hats, from Christian Chaplain to a Music Row artist to a singer-songwriter to a podcaster and an entertainer and a master storyteller. Will you please welcome James Kevin O'Connor? How are you, buddy?
All right. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate having me on the show. It's really great to be here. Thank you.
No problem at all. Glad to have you on the show. You started as a teen DJ, but you got smart and got out before the career started. I didn't do that. I stuck around for 40 plus years, buddy. You've worn so many hats. Let's first talk about your musical journey. When did you start your musical journey? What age was it?
Well, I got hooked on the guitar at I think I started a little late. I had a couple of false starts, as a young teenager. And then really when I hit my early 20s, I think I was 21 or 22, I became obsessed with guitar playing, and I would literally practice for 10 hours a day and work a full-time job. I mean, I would fall asleep with the guitar in my hand, and I just became obsessed. And the minute I started writing songs immediately, and I haven't stopped since. So it's been a fun ride.
Wonderful. What was the name of the first band you were in? That's one thing I always love to ask artists when they first break into the music business or actually start to perform.
The first cover band, the first organized one, when I finally got out of the basement in the garage, was called Strange Enough.
I like that.
And we did a lot of pop. We were doing late 70s music at the time. Dire Straits, Eddie Van Halen. Van Halen was just breaking at the time, and we were just playing everything and anything. Santana, Doobie Brothers.
Wow, you got a nice
all the
mix.
Things anybody wanted to hear in the bars. We would play, and something that challenged us to work on chops. We wanted to be good musicians. So it was some very funny early humble beginnings for sure.
All right. You're also a Christian chaplain. Where was your chaplaincy? Well, your church, where was that located at?
It's wherever my car is parked.
Oh,
that's essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a church.
Okay.
I'm with the IFCC.
Okay.
And it's the International Federation of Christian Chaplains. So
I know it well.
A dear friend of mine she's a friend of mine, is an archbishop. Who's actually a songwriting partner for me in a project. And she's actually Princess Diana's cousin. So she actually brought me into the idea of becoming a chaplain. At first I was like, nah, I don't think that's really my wheelhouse. But around the time I started my prison ministry, she finally got me over the edge to say, yeah, you should really embrace this as a gift, not as some challenge you're carrying around on your back. It's more of something that's an honor to be that. And as I grew into it, I started to recognize and realize, it is exactly that. So I've been since 2020, I think, is when I became a chaplain.
Wonderful. I know a few chaplains through. I used to do a show called Back in the Pits, and this was all about drag racing, and they have Racers for Christ, which is also part of which is kind of an offshoot from that group there, because I know a couple of people who were part of that group that are now part of Racers for Christ. They do church services on Sunday morning, and they're there in case anyone gets hurt at the races and such. So they have a wonderful ministry there too. One thing that I have learned, I happen to have comedian Rabbi Bob Alper on a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how religious leaders sometimes start their service with a joke. Do you have a go-to joke or something you could throw at us?
No, what I my thing with the prison ministry was very strange, because I started at the beginning of the pandemic, and I only just started to get traction, and it got all shut down. You still can't get into most of them unless you're an attorney. But what I did is I combined my music, which is a lot of storytelling type of music. It's all slice of life pieces, and some of it's Christian and some of it is secular. And so what I would do is I would start telling stories to these inmates about when I was sleeping in the Shell Station ladies' room as a young man, because I had nowhere else to go, and sleeping in my car. And then I would go into stories about Jesus, and then I'd play a song that kind of related to the subject. And after a while, I seemed to win them over. They were a tough bunch to start playing.
I could only imagine.
But,
I all I know is Johnny Cash did it, and you're actually playing, and it's got to be difficult. You've got to feel a little bit intimidated, but you've got the presence of all the guards there as well. But I know a lot of the individuals behind bars are trying to reform their lives and such. So that is a very, very integral part of changing their life around, is to accept Christ. Yeah,
the thing that really struck me was, I really didn't have any fear going in there. Although, you got some tough customers. I mean, the guys that got the tats on the neck and, they get the gang stuff and everything. And most of them were, a lot of them were talking and stuff while I was trying to play. And then little by little, I won them over, and they actually all gathered around me at this one instance where they started shaking my hand saying, "Thank you so much." But it occurred to me, Rick, that a lot of those people shouldn't even be in there.
Right.
They don't have the resources to even get out. So the mission is to let them know that, the Lord has not forgotten about them. There is a new life waiting for them, and a lot of them are going to be able to embrace that. So if I can make them curious about having a relationship with the Lord, then I've succeeded. And I don't, I'm not the type of person who's a Bible thumping, yelling, screaming preacher hitting you over the head. I'm just more like, I want to make you curious. That's all.
Absolutely. No fire and brimstone, but just basically just planting the seeds. So let's get back to music here, and let's talk about the song that we're going to feature first. It's called Geography of the Soul. Can you give us the backstory on this beautiful song?
Yeah, it was actually my friend, a dear friend of mine up in the Hudson Valley, Glenn Hoagland. He came to this gig I did. It was called Rave in the Cave, and it was in an underground cave. And I was set up in front of a lake, an underground lake, and they put all haystacks all through the cave.
Yeah.
And there was 4 acts, and I opened as a solo. So he wrote this incredible review, and he talked about James Kevin O'Connor and yada, 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 all these things. And then he said, and helps you something about find the geography of your soul. And I said, wow, that is a great title. And then some of the context of the song came from American philosopher Vernon Howard, which I read. I've read most of his books. And so it's kind of an introspection about, where are you going, and have you even investigated, what is the geography of your soul? And if you don't know it, you should probably investigate it.
Well, let's listen to it here, because I think everyone's going to be a little introspective and try to figure out the geography of their soul. Here it is right now from today's podcast guest, James Kevin O'Connor, on the Someone You Should Know podcast.
Why just settle for the map? Welcome to the territory. I just discovered where it's at. Now I need to study the geography of my soul. You said you're on the same path. You're hoping that you'll make a new discovery. And now you know there's no turning back. It was there in the geography of your soul. Of your soul. I've been wandering around for years and years, trying to break free from the pain. Maybe all I ever really need follow the map. When we can celebrate the territory. Don't even consider turning back. Now that we found the geography of our soul, of our soul. Now there's no need to settle for the map. When we can celebrate the territory. Don't even consider turning back. Now that we found the geography of our soul.
Great music right there. Geography of the Soul from today's podcast guest, James Kevin O'Connor. Besides your solo work on Music Roll, you are also an integral part of a band called Mercy. Can you tell us about this project?
Yeah, this is a very special project. This I mentioned before the songwriting partner, Archbishop Christine, and her and I wrote this entire full album, and we went to Music Row and recorded it. So the band is really more to serve what is going to be an eventual full-length interactive Broadway-style play. It's going to be
awesome.
a theatrical presentation. So it's a full album of music of the last week of Christ's life and his specifically his last 48 hours on earth and what he went through right up to the dying on the cross and his last words. It's all been put into music, and it's a very contemporary sort of rock type of presentation. And the idea of the theater, it's going to be sort of like Rocky Horror Show meets West Side Story.
Right.
And
I like
in that it's the Rocky Horror part is like, you know, how the audience interacts. And
Absolutely.
They know all the lines.
Toast.
So, yeah, so it's going to be like that, where people can actually interact with what's going on. And this is going to be really different. It's going to be sort of the Rainbow Coalition. I had one of my people that I was associated with trying to get Kanye West actually to play the lead, which is Jesus in it. So it's going to be, African-American, of people of color. It's not going to be the usual, blonde hair, blue-eyed Jesus that we've seen in the past. It's going to be more of, what was Jesus really like? He probably wasn't that. So it's kind of an attempt to get everybody involved. And so that is in the works. We've been working on the script for a while on that.
When that actually happens, do me a favor and get back with me, because I'd love to do an update. And that way if we can let everyone know exactly how they can experience that. That's very, very cool. Not only are you doing all those many things, wearing those many hats, you're also a fellow podcaster. You had a podcast called Dharmic Revolution that is now rebranded as the Podcasting Your Global Career. Can you give us a rundown of what that is? By the way, we'll include all the links down in the show notes here so everyone can link to all your stuff. But tell us a little bit about this podcast.
Yeah, I started broadcasting in 2015, and you brought up a really funny little tidbit there. You said that I was a high school DJ, and I hadn't thought about that in years, and I'd been podcasting for years. And then I said, look at this, I completely forgot. I was a sophomore in high school on an FM radio station in the high school, which is really cool. We had all the albums, the record companies would send you all their albums.
Cool.
And here I am all these years later, nothing's changed except technology. Still a microphone and an audience.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I started Dharmic Evolution to give those other fellow singer-songwriters a platform. So I started going around the world. I started going to London, and I was inviting artists there, and Amsterdam and South Africa. And I've had people from everywhere, mostly in the States, but I wanted the show to be a little bit more of a global reach. And I kind of outgrew what was past because so many years had gone by. I've been doing this for 8 years. And so now we're still doing the singer-songwriters, but I've kind of hybrided the show into authors, speakers, thought leaders, people in the business community that can serve the musical audience as well. So I'm starting to, work on a different level now. So podcasting Your Global Career serves that end.
Wonderful. That's pretty much what this show is all about, too. I had my time in the limelight. I don't need any fame anymore. I used to do a show when I was with the All-Star Radio Network back in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was called Someone You Should Know. And it was all about the artists who are trying to develop their careers, but they're not going to get any airtime on the radio. And that's what the whole thing evolved. And it also started going into the musicians who were big hits but have ruined their lives and are trying to reestablish their careers and such. So that's basically what the show was originally about. I just retired recently, and my wife said, "You've got to write a book. You got to write a book. You have such a fascinating life. You've had so many people you've talked to through the decades and such. You need to write a book." I said, "I can't write a book." She said, "Well, how about doing a podcast?" I said, "I can do a podcast." So the whole thing is right now is we're celebrating artists and getting the word out to all the people to say, hey, listen, you can plunk down $300 to see this band in concert, or you can pay $20 to see this band over your local pub or whatever it might be. There's just so much great local talent, and there's so much great, and that's around the world. And that's one nice thing about the podcast show. It's global also. We've got listeners in Germany and Japan. We just had one in Australia this last week, so I'm excited about that. So we're actually branching out. And it's only been around, well, the original show, like I say, came out in the late 90s, but this show's only been around since October. Now that I'm retired, I got time to play with it. So it's fun having guests like you on there who also have a very similar passion to help others.
Yeah, that's awesome that you're doing this. I know what it takes to put these shows together. It's, most people say that had I known how much work it would be to podcast, I would have never started. And I've heard that from so many people, but you keep on going because it's always the joy that you get after every interview. I always feel like, I made a new friend, and there's a new alliance here. And it's just really an awesome way to connect to people. Absolutely.
And that's just it. It's all about helping one another. I don't need any, if I make $1 out of this, that's cool. If I don't, hey, I'm doing God's message. As far as God told me many years ago when I was struggling with my ego, I said, I can't get my way out of this. And it seemed like there was something went off in my head that said, stop helping yourself, help others. And it's like, that's exactly what I've been doing. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
You are a master storyteller, sir. Could you please help us with one of your stories? I would just love to hear one of your stories. I think it'd be great.
Yeah. So the master storyteller is a very tongue-in-cheek. It's I'm not quite so conceited and so full of myself that I would call myself, but I got that from my previous career as an electrical contractor.
Oh, seriously?
When you
somehow those don't go together.
Yeah. See, when you aspire to be the best that you can in that particular trade, you aspire to be a master electrician. So I said, well, if I keep telling myself that I'm the master storyteller, perhaps one day I will ascend to be worthy of that honor and that title. So it was kind of tongue in cheek, But yeah, stories, so many stories. I mean, I'll tell you one that was really funny. We were playing in this dive bar like we all did. And this place was a biker, crazy, insane place. And I was not quite as reserved in those days as I am now, and a little more in control of myself. But it had a low ceiling, and we're on this stage, and this one guy was really trouble all night, and he was out there wildly dancing, and they had this this bulb, just a bare bulb hanging out of the ceiling, and he's dancing, and he came up and he punched it. And I was in the middle of a guitar solo with my 56 Les Paul, and the glass went all in my face.
Oh,
and
no.
I just left the stage, and I grabbed him by the throat, and still while I'm hammering on the guitar, and start slamming his head into the wall.
Oh, my.
And all hell broke loose, of course, And I was newly married at the time, and that night I told my wife, "You're never to come to this club again, ever. It's like, this place is too dangerous."
There are events like that, and that leads me to the next section. It's called Tales from the Road, the gigs that things didn't go just as planned. I'm guessing that's probably yours. Do you have another one to share, maybe, from being a performer and doing all those load-ins and load-outs?
Yeah, we got this other gig. This is when I was doing the cover band. Some of these were the funniest things ever.
Okay,
and we got set up. This is going to be a great thing. It's out on this big stage in the middle of it. It ended up being a median in the highway. It was like this little space. There's cars going by this way and that way, and there was a furniture store there. So we played at a furniture store with cars just racing by. Where it was lucky we didn't even get killed.
Oh my! Especially distracted drivers.
Yeah, distracted drivers, the whole thing, and that was a real bust.
Oh.
So yeah, there's tons of things that go on when you're out playing and just don't go the way. How about getting double booked? Has that ever happened to you? You showed up with all the equipment, and there's almost a fight because, and I almost thought at this one time this happened to us that the promoter did it to steal both audiences. So two groups show up and then all these people come, and he just hires one and not the other. So
there you go. Yeah, it's I had an event on New Year's Eve. I was just a DJ doing a countdown show on New Year's Eve. They booked me into a club, and it's not the music that the club is familiar with. We're playing classic rock. They're used to dance. That's who want to dance on New Year's Eve. And we're playing American Pie and Stairway to Heaven. So needless to say, it was not a fun evening. It was not a fun evening.
Yeah.
I love those stories, though. And there's just so many great ones. I had a friend of mine from New York talking about the fact that when he was just breaking into the business and his band got to play a gig that the radio station put on, they were expecting a good crowd. It was out actually at an amusement park. He actually ended up opening for a puppet show, very much like Spinal Tap. So,
that's
great. There's so many great stories, though, and that's one of the things that I love to include, called Tales from the Road. That's something I've done from the very, very start, because there's just so many of them. It's just something at the time you're thinking, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? But afterwards, you sit down with your friends over a glass of wine or a bottle of beer and say, do you remember that crazy night?
Yeah, there was some good ones. I remember when I was I wanted to go out and play solo. I was in a band for a while, but to fuel my songwriting, I was so into songwriting, so I started doing the old Dylan thing, just the guitar and the harp and everything.
Right.
And I would go into New York City and play Folk City and all of those haunts. And the first time I went, I couldn't believe there was a line of about 70 people waiting to get on the stage at Folk City.
Oh, geez.
Because everybody, and then I finally found my niche. I found a bunch of clubs there that I would go to, and I could actually play. You had to really hunt them down, but I would play mostly original music all night. And it gave you kind of a leg up on, if you did that, it was kind of your laboratory. You can figure out what worked, what didn't work, what songs you thought were good were not so good. And you could keep developing your craft and your voice and be in front of people and do it all at the same time. So that's a really good thing for anybody who aspires to be a songwriter. Is
totally agree.
Just get out there and play, man, and test your stuff out. And you'll know, even if your eyes are closed, you can feel the energy of the audience.
Let's talk about some websites and social media links and of course your podcast. Can you give us those, please?
Yeah. If you just Google James Kevin O'Connor, pretty much a lot of things will come up. But my podcast is Podcasting Your Global Career. You can search that one out. I have a few websites. JamesKevinO'Connor.com is my artist page. And you can find me pretty much using that anywhere. I also have one for my agency, which is the James O'Connor Agency. And with that, I developed a specialty for, I don't really, go after signing artists and things like most traditional agencies, but my specialty is writing branded songs for authors, speakers, and thought leaders, and getting the value of what their brand is, and then writing writing something specific to help highlight what their career is.
Awesome.
So that's
Very
what
good.
I do with that particular business. Yeah.
Very good. Final song we're going to feature is called State of Grace. Can you give us the backstory on this one?
Yeah, this one was an experience for anybody who ever got engaged and then got unengaged. It's kind of the lyrics will tell you the story about that of and what your feeling is, and without going into the details, because this happened to me and happened to many other people. It's feeling really bad and feeling almost like you're angry at that person for whatever reason the engagement didn't work out. But rather than embrace and worship that feeling of anger, you want to wish the person the best. So the state of grace is something that, as you're parting, when you finally come to your senses and dispel your anger, right, you want to wish them all the grace in the world. And so that's and this is, by the way, this is James Mitchell playing the electric guitars on this. I had played the riff on acoustic and played it for him. We went in the studio and he took it to another level. And
yes, he did. It's very nice. I like it.
Yeah, so it's a favorite by some people, but State of Grace, that's what it's about.
All right, it's going to be one of our favorites, too, because it's coming up next. And James, thanks so much for being on the show. Do appreciate you taking the time. I know you got a busy schedule. You got another podcast, or you got another interview coming up in a couple of minutes. But I thank you so much for taking the time to be on Someone You Should Know. We do appreciate it, man.
Rick, thank you so much. It was really an honor to be here, and I do appreciate you reaching out to me. Have a blessed day. Thanks so much.
Tear me up and then spit me out like broken glass on a highway crash. You did a pretty shameful thing when we said goodbye and you walked out with that ring. I felt a little bit of sting, but I will not retaliate, 'cause my life's just great. No need to reciprocate. It's just not my state. I refuse to evaluate. My heart holds no hate. I will not participate. I'm in a state of grace. I'm in a state of grace. You must have had a Mississippi moment way down deep in the Delta where your daddy was born. Are you a little bit torn? The thought never struck me till now that way deep down inside you were a woman of scorn. It's not the way you were born, but I will not retaliate, 'cause my life's just great. No need to reciprocate. It's just not my state. I refuse to evaluate. My heart
Hi, this is Rick Anthony, thanking you again for listening to this episode of Someone You Should Know. Now, if you're an aspiring musician or an established musician that's looking for a little exposure, I invite you to drop us a line at someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. That's someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. Also, I invite you to tell a friend about the Someone You Should Know podcast. I thank you for tuning in this time, and I invite you to check us out next time on the Someone You Should Know podcast, because you never know who's going to show up. Until next time, remember, God loves you, and so do I.